Hi, welcome back. Are you one of the 2.6 million people in the UK with ADHD? If you are, you might be finding it particularly challenging to stay on top of your finances. Why? Well, according to the organisation Think ADHD, it can affect how your brain handles things like planning, focus and organisation, all of which are pretty crucial when it comes to managing money. So paying off debt, saving into a pension, paying a bill on time, things like that can feel really overwhelming. So this time, we're going to explore exactly why money and ADHD often clash, find out what can help, and take a look at how to build systems that will work for you.
The ADHD tax is the concept that all of these issues add up and end up costing money. And what we see more often in people with ADHD are issues then in terms of what do I need to do with my money, where does it need to go, and actually then following through on that.
Krystle, you have ADHD.
Yeah, even as a finance expert, I struggle with some of these things.
I'm Philippa Lamb, and just before we begin, if you enjoy this episode, we would love you to subscribe. Just hit the button. It is completely free, doesn't cost you a thing. You'll be the first to get every episode we release. On top of that, you'll be helping new listeners to find us too. Here to help us dig into ADHD and coping strategies, I'm really pleased to welcome Krystle McGilvery. She's a financial strategist, coach and behavioural expert. Emily Tribe is back with us. She's head of culture, inclusion and wellbeing at PensionBee. And so is registered psychologist Dr. Tara Quinn with us for the second time. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Here's the usual disclaimer before we start. Please remember anything discussed on the podcast shouldn't be regarded as financial advice or legal advice. And when investing, your capital is at risk. Tara, I thought we might make a start by actually defining ADHD. What is it?
So ADHD is what we call a neurodevelopmental presentation. It can impact the front part of the brain, which is where all of our executive functioning is. So that's the things that control impulse control, our ability to plan and follow through with tasks, but also our emotion regulation. So it's quite an important part. And for people with ADHD, there can be differences in how they present and conduct themselves. And sometimes it can cause problems in their everyday life. Sometimes it can be a wonderful thing as well. So hopefully we'll be able to explore both sides.
Absolutely. And we're hearing so much about it in the media now. And Krystle, you have ADHD. So tell me when you first realised that you did.
Yeah, I had just started my master's at Warwick University and noticed some struggles with my studies.
Okay.
Going back to university as a mature student, it's a big contrast to the life that you've kind of created, the systems and routines you'd put in place, but then going to university and doing a master's and following this new way of working, yeah, that was quite disruptive for me. So I noticed some struggles and went to the Wellbeing section and explored it.
Really? And they were helpful. Did they point you in that direction in the first place then?
Eventually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, initially, because I'm a chartered accountant, because I've got a bachelor's degree, because I've been heading up finance departments for years, they initially said, oh, it's because you're studying psychology now as opposed to maths. So I had to push to get a dyslexia initially diagnosis because I'd done some reading and learnt about it. That's when the world of neurodivergence really opened up to me.
So, Emily, you must come across this in the course of your work, but it's a personal thing for you too.
Yes, it is. So I'd say in general, neurodivergence is something that runs in my family. And I'm also on the path that's very common for women thinking about getting a diagnosis now in my 30s.
So does that feel like a positive thing for you now, that you're getting your arms around the idea that maybe this is why I feel like I feel, why I operate?
Overall, a positive thing, but I think it is also quite a destabilising thing because it's sort of leads you to questioning a lot about your identity and the way that you've been throughout childhood, throughout your teenage years, throughout your adulthood. And when you start to recognise how neurodivergence played into that and wasn't picked up on, wasn't recognised, there can actually be a bit of grief that comes alongside that as well as the understanding. So yeah, I'd say it's been mixed for me.
Yeah, because Tara, I mean, we hear a lot about children being diagnosed, school children being, taking medication for ADHD.
Yeah.
But later life, that's really coming to the fore now, isn't it?
Absolutely, and for women particularly. So when we look at the kind of formal diagnostic pathway, people will be categorised, and we have what we call hyperactive presentation and inattentive. So inattentive is the stuff that we don't tend to notice. It's the more kind of, the less observable things, and that is the stuff that women tend to predominantly have. So people then are thinking back and going, actually, I was accused of being a daydreamer at school. And, yes. And some of these things that actually get missed. And women are much better at masking as well. So that's kind of covering up things that they may notice in themselves, how they conduct themselves around other people. So when you add those things together, you get this perfect storm, which is why, because we have so many more wonderful people talking about this now, helping us to understand, reducing the stigma and the shame, we have people going, hey, this is me, and I'd like to pursue this, but in a really compassionate way. That it's not about this diagnosis, this label, it's about formulating you and what you need and what you don't need. And that's just how it should be. It really should.
It's such an interesting conversation. I mean, we are going to limit ourselves to money, really, in this podcast, because there is so much we could talk about with ADHD. But I'm wondering, Krystle, in terms of managing money, in your personal experience, have you found that that ADHD plays into it?
Personally, for me,
Yeah.
totally.
You're an accountant, so we're all thinking you'd be good with money.
You think? It's not the case.
Okay.
Not at all. I mean, there was one year that I particularly remember where I lost my bank card, I think 4 times in the year.
Okay.
But what's really funny about this story is I would find it after ordering a new one.
Of course. Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, when it comes to kind of the admin side of managing your money, doing your budget, and even for me as a chartered accountant and someone who works in the space of finance all the time, some of these tasks are really monotonous and repetitive. Yeah, even as a finance expert, I struggle with some of these things.
So as an accountant, I mean, obviously AI and tech really plays into that work now. Does that help you? Do you use that to minimise that repetition that you find challenging?
Oh, 100%. I mean, one of the common tips I think a lot of people make is around automation and taking advantage of standing orders. So setting up effectively your own direct debit. You're just organising it yourself. Yeah, and same with the admin tasks. I use a range of software in my business that helps get that admin stuff done so I don't have to think about it. Because, back to what you said earlier, it's less so about being a finance expert. It's more about having the systems in place to support you in the way that you work. And that's what I've done for myself, and that's what I support the people I work with do and set up for themselves as well.
We're going to get into all that because I think it's going to be really useful for listeners. But Emily, we can actually quantify the cost of having ADHD, can't we? We've heard about the pink tax, the single tax, and now the ADHD tax. Tell us about that.
The ADHD tax is the concept that all of these issues add up and end up costing money. I mean, I've got a personal example, which is I really struggle with the executive function required to do a weekly shop at a supermarket and plan what I'm going to eat in advance.
Okay.
And so I end up just relying on shopping at the corner shop when I run out of stuff. And corner shops, I realised this, it really sank in for me when I saw a supermarket chain delivery van delivering to my corner shop. And I thought, well, if they're stocking up from the supermarket, there's a big markup
I'm
here.
paying the profit difference there.
Yeah. I've been trying really hard to get into budgeting recently and using some AI to help me get there, and saw how much I was spending on eating out and takeaways, partly because of the executive dysfunction of not being able to have a stocked cupboard and cook from scratch.
Because this is a study, the one I'm looking at here is from Monzo, the bank, and they're saying about £1,600 a year. It's going to cost you that sort of, dysregulation, that sort of just not being able to plan ahead easily. So, serious money. Tara, we're going to get into specifics about how ADHD manifests with people in relation to money. But the overarching term for it would be executive dysfunction.
Yeah, so the front part of our brain does all these wonderful things, but sometimes it can go on holiday, sometimes it can have little rewiring problems. And it controls our ability to plan and to follow through with tasks. So what we see more often in people with ADHD are issues then in terms of what do I need to do with my money, where does it need to go, and actually then following through on that. But also if you add in the other functions of that part in the brain, sometimes you can be more impulsive about what you're buying. Your emotions are a huge part of that as well. So you can have more of that in the moment, I want that, which may then mean that something else isn't going through, a standing order, a debit's cancelled, or you might not also be keeping track. And if we throw in the fact that we're all humans and we have emotions, sometimes you will notice those behaviours, maybe at a later stage. Sometimes that can infect your emotions. You feel a bit of shame or guilt or low mood because you haven't got enough money to cope, or that you did this behaviour and it's something you do. So it's kind of looking at what we call those behavioural loops and trying to be really compassionate, because that's a lot to manage.
It's like you were saying earlier, Emily,
Yeah.
that whole kind of, I did this stuff stuff and actually only now really understanding why you did that stuff.
Self-compassion is the biggest one, because I find I get in a cycle where I'll be really impulsive, spend lots of money, and then the next month I'll put as much money as I physically can into a savings account, and I'll be like, I'm not going to touch that, and then I inevitably end up doing that because I've set too much of a restrictive goal. And then when you add in shame on top of that, you just keep yourself in the cycle.
I'm so glad you said that, because conversations like this can help to reduce the shame. That if someone listening goes, this is something that we all do, and people without ADHD do as well. We are all subject to having issues with our frontal lobes and impulsivity. And the more we talk about it, or the more you share with friends, family, the more actually you can help each other. So I think that's a good thing.
It's not uncommon, this impulsivity, is it? That study, that Monzo study, they say 48% of people with ADHD, they do this often, they struggle with impulse control. And that's compared to 12% of those without it. So it's a big difference, isn't it? It's a big driver of that sort of problem. So, Krystle, I'd like to talk about strategies, specifically around impulsivity. How can people try and iron that out of their day-to-day?
Yeah, it's so funny when you mentioned, the delay part not being a thing. For some people, it works. Some people waiting 24 hours or 7 days actually works because they come back and they're like, I don't really care to buy that thing.
Oh, is this the kind of put it in your online shopping basket but don't buy?
I was going to mention that, yeah.
I use that myself. I think a lot of us find that quite helpful, actually.
Yeah, you get that dopamine hit of actually, I've got this stuff in my basket that I could buy.
Yeah.
And then you've got to go and cook dinner, then you're going to bed, and it's the next day, and it's, what's that? Clear it out. That's kind of one tip. I think the other is, this comes down to the initial organisation and maybe having pots of money for different things. So where you maybe have a bank account that is for your bills that you have to pay. You don't need to think about that. But having a space where you have fun money, where actually you can be a bit reckless with that. You've put away your savings, you've invested, but you've got this spare bit and you can see quite clearly, well, that's all I have. It doesn't have an overdraft feature as well, for example.
Absolutely.
But then you can be free and allow yourself to have fun, because there are going to be moments when you actually just want to buy the thing.
That's a nice idea.
I actually haven't tried that before, having a fun money budget, and I really like the idea. I've tried doing a daily budget before and then never end up sticking to it, whereas that, I'm going to go away and use AI to work out what my fun money budget could be.
The way I look at it is, the wrong way to go about it is saying, I'm going to stop this bad habit, full stop, because actually it's serving a purpose. There's a reason why that habit, whether it's good or bad, exists. So instead what we're doing here is we're putting something else in place that kind of helps it not be so bad. So you're still satisfying that need.
I'm with you. And it feels easier to do, doesn't it, if you frame it that way?
Yeah.
Less of a hill to climb. The other thing I'm thinking is, the society we live in, we are driven to spend, aren't we? And so if you have a tendency to, impulse spend, it's the worst possible time to exist in the world, isn't it? So strategies around trying to reduce that noise? Is it useful?
100%. Yeah. I do it myself. I have to go through my emails and just find, who is telling me to buy things, and actually just delete, unsubscribe and get rid, because then it's not brought to your attention. And that's how it works. If we look at certain products and services and the colours they use and the positioning of, how they set up their web pages, they're using behavioural science, which is my area of expertise, to get you to do the thing. So actually you can be a bit smarter and be like, actually, unsubscribe to that. I'm not going to go there anymore.
Because it really matters, doesn't it, Tara? Because just having it arrive in your inbox and then deleting it is not the same thing, is it?
Absolutely. And I've noticed recently, I could be on social media and an advert will come up for something and I might look at it or even click on it, but then it's everywhere else.
Yes.
So everything's against you. And that can also help when we come back to self-compassion, that actually this isn't you and your brain and something wrong with you. You may have your formulation, but these companies are also doing stuff.
That's a whole industry.
Absolutely. So that can kind of help, that we can all get kind of drawn into that. So what we look at in psychology are what we call our internal regulators. So what have I got in me to go, no, yes, change my environment, what am I looking at? But also that there are external regulators. So that's turning off stuff, staying away from things, doing different pots of money, using AI and different apps as well, and getting that perfect balance that fits you.
Let's get back to our list of characteristics and the way this manifests for people. I'm thinking the next one that is really interesting is time blindness.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So again, part of our frontal lobes, our ability to kind of pay attention in the moment can mean it's very, very easy to lose track of time and what we're doing. So one of the things you might notice more of in people with ADHD is, getting from A to B, for example, and getting there on time, or things like hyperfocus, for example, where you are looking at something, concentrating on something that could be work, outside of work, and 4 hours have gone by.
Okay.
So, but what it can mean is that you're more susceptible, therefore, to spending money in different ways. You may realise you've been in a pub for 4 hours, 5 hours, and drunk so much. It's being orientated and just being compassionate, because it's quite a hard thing to catch, actually, as well.
Yeah, and also things as simple as being regularly late for work.
Yes.
It's not going to play well, isn't it, in long-term career
Yep.
progression, earnings, all that sort of thing.
Yep.
Just little things, but more directly about money. Paying bills on time, presumably. You're nodding.
Well, I just automate everything. It
Do you?
can be automated.
Okay.
I automate it. I set a lot of alarms, a lot of reminders. But the worst one is things that don't come up very often. Tax return every year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've managed to complete a single tax return without having at least 2 meltdowns.
Really?
Yeah, because I hate breaking rules as well. I'm very rule focused, and I accidentally missed a rule because I misread something about the tax return. There was some difference between doing the online offline version. I can't quite remember, but anyway, I missed a deadline and I was just devastated by the fact that I had missed this deadline. It worked out completely fine. I didn't even have to pay a fine.
Yeah, but the anxiety is real, isn't it?
The anxiety, yeah.
Because, that study again, 3 times more likely to miss bill payments, according to that study, ADHDers. That's a lot. And then there's real financial consequences to that, aren't there? But I'm guessing automation, Krystle, here, yeah?
Automation for sure. And like you said, the consequences might be a fine or a fee or other kind of spiralling problems, which can be really problematic. Time blindness is such a real thing. 100%. And actually it works on both sides because it allows you to complete some amazing things and really drill down into things. But I've got this really nice kind of old style alarm clock on my table.
Right.
I set a timer for the work I want to do. Because it's so loud and aggressive, it will disrupt me. But it's when I need to do a specific task, like, update my financial planner, for example.
Yeah.
It's going to take me like an hour and I'll get really into it and excited. And before you know it, it could be 3-4 hours. But the alarm clock will stop me in my tracks.
Yeah, now it's interesting using an alarm clock because I'm one, because everyone would automatically think set a phone alarm, right? But this is a kind of regular noise, isn't it? They're quite easy to ignore, aren't they? The quotidian things.
Stop, you're doing the snooze button, and and that's what you call an external regulator. But your brain will also then just associate that with that thing. So then your brain will be doing loads of stuff for you every time you use that alarm clock for other things as well.
But it's important, and you mentioned this before about kind of the hyper-focus thing. That is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, there's loads of wonderful research about people with ADHD and how hyper-focus can make them incredibly brilliant people to have in the workplace, innovators, entrepreneurs. And it's just, recognising that sometimes, like with any behaviour, there can be pros and cons. So if you're hyper-focused and you've missed your train to work, or you're supposed to go and pick your kids up, or you were supposed to do something else, it's just, again, we're going to use that word a lot, compassion around that as well. Try stuff out. That's what we always say in psychology. Test it out. Let's see if this alarm clock works. What happens after an hour? Do I tend to just turn it off, put it in a drawer, or am I paying attention to it? That's where the compassion can really help you build up your strategies as well.
Yeah, strategies, just for someone who doesn't have this, I find my online calendar is an absolute godsend for me in terms of things like, you're saying, tax returns, car tax, all those things that prop up only once a year and are not on the edge of your consciousness. I throw them in my calendar on repeat every year and find it works so beautifully. So in some ways, digital is great, isn't it, for this stuff, as well as driving bad behaviours. So I'm guessing things as simple as that. Krystle, do you find it works for the people you work with?
Oh, 100%, yeah. And I think, when we think about finance, again, people think it means numbers and actually being good at that stuff. But no, it's about having a system that works for you. And I think what we're talking about here is what you're talking about is time blocking. So it's what I do in my diary is I actually block out times to do things. So not just for meetings, but actually how long will it take me to do this financial planner? How long will it take me to check and update my subscriptions and actually put that in my calendar? But same as you, my diary, my calendar is my life.
So, hi, it's me, Philippa, just interrupting for a moment to say a big thanks to all of you who've subscribed to the Pension Confident podcast. Our mission is to help you feel more financially confident, and we are thrilled with the community we're growing here on YouTube. If you haven't already done it, hit that subscribe button right underneath this video so you never miss an episode. Meantime, enjoy the rest of this month's conversation. We've talked a lot about tech, which is obviously really, really helpful. I'm wondering about other people. Can we co-opt other people to assist with this sort of thing?
Oh, absolutely. That's kind of, I'm such a dinosaur psychologist. This is old school stuff, looking at your environment and the people. So those external regulators can be people or things. So if you've got a partner or a friend who knows that you're the person who might be late to the pub or has got the tickets for the airline on their phone or whatever, that can message you beforehand and ask you what do you need, how can we make this easier? And that's why having the conversations are so wonderful. So
it's a lot, isn't it? I suppose I'm thinking about, Emily sitting down doing her tax return and, hey, none of us love doing this, right? But if you had someone actually with you while you're doing that task, so not just telling you, reminding you to do it, is that at all helpful?
I think I'm more inclined to just pay someone to do it for me.
Well, there's that way. Obviously more expensive. I'm going to say that is the more expensive option. Because I think it's called body doubling, isn't it?
Body doubling, I think, is a godsend. It's worked with so many people I've worked with. I need it myself with certain things. And it's where if we think about doing it online, because, I might be at home, we jump on a Zoom together and we don't have to work on the same thing. You could be writing a book or you could be, I don't know, planning your meals for the week, but I'm doing my budget. But we're both on this kind of in this space together, committed to doing a task with each other.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful. I've had people, and I conduct these spaces as well, but I've had people get things done that have been on their to-do list for months and months, and that you feel so good and so proud of yourself. And it's, something about being with somebody, the co-regulation in that space. It's, try it if you haven't.
Yeah, that kind of brings us very neatly to generally emotional dysregulation around money. Shame, guilt, all that stuff where we do stuff again and again that we know is not good for us or others and just isn't working for us. And the self-loathing creeps in, doesn't it, about the repetition? Why are you doing it again to yourself?
And we're always the biggest critics of ourselves. We're less likely to say that to a friend. If I always say, compassionate friend, if your friend was telling you what they've just spent and how they feel about it, you would always judge them differently to yourselves. It's kind of how we're hardwired. But being compassionate about it and having conversations also just reduces what I call the ick. When it's up here, we tend to feel worse about things. Once we've said, you know what, I feel really guilty or shameful about what I've done, you do feel better.
On the point of emotional regulation, probably the thing that's been most helpful for me is therapy, which isn't obviously available to as many people as it should be, but having someone who gets it to go and speak to every week about what's going on. And I think back to the point about not piling on shame, like viewing everything as a learning opportunity.
So that's it, Krystle, is the understanding what you're doing, understanding you might do it a few times or keep on doing it, but taking the lesson, because otherwise you are trapped in that repeat spiral, aren't you?
Yeah, when it comes to kind of making a decision, impulse spending, for example, what I like to remind people is you've made this decision because there's an emotional need. You feel a certain way and there's nothing wrong with that. And actually maybe looking at the fact that, for example, you've impulse spent, that's your go-to technique right now to deal with that emotion. And all that needs to happen is maybe learning a new way of doing the thing when you're feeling that emotion, kind of reframing that and kind of lets people let go of that negative feeling they're feeling about, oh, I've done this thing again and it's problematic.
There is a huge amount of information about ADHD online, and I'm wondering about kind of curating what's useful and what isn't. I don't know if you have recommendations for people if they want to read into understanding themselves. Well, have you got favourites that you?
I have unfavourites. Is that right to say? So I always say, because I am such a huge kind of pusher of making sure that whoever is talking about it is someone who knows what they are talking about. Yeah. So there is lived experience, which I think is fantastic, absolutely, but also there are people in the kind of mental health space who are talking about things that are factually incorrect, and therefore you might be more prone to buying and following and paying for programs and things that aren't helpful. So look at things like the NHS website, ADHD UK, and they will have branches of where to go from there. So they will have people talking about lived experience, follow podcasts where people are talking themselves about experience, and they will have lovely lists of things to follow.
Guidance you can rely on.
Yes, absolutely. And it's nice and structured. So
really,
one thing, take it from there.
Thinking about the people you work with, Krystle, how long do you tend to work with people?
It ranges. Some people actually just need a little boost and it might just be a quick phone call. Or sometimes some people work with me over several months actually. And that might be where we start with the reframing and actually getting you to think differently about yourself and what you can achieve and what's possible for you. Because I think a lot of people start to think that certain things are not possible for them, like buying a home or investing. And actually it is. We just have to find our own ways of getting there. So that might be a couple of months, including actually some basic knowledge around, debt management or credit score building and things like that.
Because saving, pensions, investments, all the things we normally talk about on the podcast, that's a stress space here, isn't it? Because it involves planning, doesn't it, Emma?
Yeah.
So you're nodding at me. This is your area.
I'm not here because I'm the person who's cracked financial planning.
But it's a challenge, though, the whole thing. Because as you say, if you're going to struggle with what am I going to eat? What is my family going to eat next week? The idea of when I'm older, what will I need? How much money? I mean, that must seem really, really hard to grapple with.
Well, actually, that is one thing that I have done and have prioritised, which is a monthly contribution into my pension that I can afford. And I was going to say, I think pensions are actually quite a well-designed financial product for people with ADHD because they're ring-fenced from impulsivity.
So you can't take the money out.
You can't access the money until you're 55. And that was kind of why I prioritised it, because I was like, once it's there, I don't have to think about it and I can feel good about it and knowing I'm doing something for my future.
That's very affirming, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, I'm thinking there's 2.6 million people, I think, with a diagnosis. We've talked about the possibility of many, many more who are undiagnosed officially. Are banks and the finance industry generally getting their arms around this and offering help? Emily, in your experience, it's your sector.
I think it is really starting. And I think the biggest thing is actually just about listening to your customers. At PensionBee, we do a lot of focus groups and interviews, and we have done those with our customers who are neurodivergent as well.
To understand what they want.
Yeah, but also I think there's something really interesting which is called the curb cut effect, which is about these adjustments that we make for people with a disability actually end up impacting most people positively. So they lower the curbs for wheelchair users, but actually, as I discovered on maternity leave, it's very, very helpful for people with prams. It's very helpful for people with heavy luggage.
That's such an intriguing idea. I've never thought about it like that before.
Yeah.
But as you say, we've talked about in this podcast, haven't we? The things you've all been talking about are some of them I use already, and I'm not an ADHD.
Yeah.
So,
exactly. They just make good sense. And so when it comes to our product at PensionBee, we've designed it with simplicity in mind, and that helps people who might have ADHD or other neurodivergence, but also it just helps everyone. Everyone enjoys using a simple product. We also have beekeepers, so everyone gets that human support, someone they can call. Lots of people with neurodivergence hate phone calls, so we also have live chat, email. It's about having flexibility, simplicity and listening, I think.
Multiple channels. So Krystle, what's your take on the finance industry? Who's doing what?
Yeah, you've got quite a few banks. For example, NatWest have a panel which is all about neurodiversity and creating spaces and making sure their products and services support, people with ADHD, for example.
So I think Barclays, you can actually register with them, can't you, for tailored assistance. What might that look like? Yeah,
it's phenomenal. It's about them getting first-hand experience to understand kind of what needs you have so they can incorporate that into their services, which is phenomenal.
Okay, yeah, it is. So I think M&S, their bank, I think they've partnered, haven't they, with the ADHD Foundation to do work in this area?
Yeah, as well. And I think what they do is great. They provide actual, guidance and support and content for you to help manage your finances properly. I think that's where it's really helpful because you can go through the list of everything that's there and be like, I'm going to pick and choose these things that work for me.
Yeah, and I'm glad to see, actually, looking down my list of banks and financial institutions, it's not just the big ones, because there's a challenger bank, Neuros. I think they're developing tools specifically for neurodiverse customers too. So it's spreading, isn't it? Oh, but it's encouraging to know it's coming. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. A great discussion. That is it for this time. You'll find all sorts of useful links in the show notes. If you want to dig a bit deeper into ADHD and money, remember to give us a rating and a review. It only takes a moment, I promise. And if you've missed an episode, don't worry. You can catch up anytime on your favourite app or YouTube, or if you're a PensionBee customer, of course, in the PensionBee app. Join us next time when we'll be talking about multi-generational living. Now, with housing costs sky high, working people time poor, could it be a good solution for people of all ages? Just a final reminder, anything discussed on the podcast shouldn't be regarded as financial advice or legal advice. And when investing, your capital is at risk. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time.